It began with silence, not sound, but a pause so deep the air itself seemed to wait. In Banda Aceh, a fisherman tied his boat to the dock, humming a tune older than his scars, his voice steady against the rhythm of gentle waves. Nearby, a young girl chased a crab across the sand, her laughter sharp and bright in the still morning air. Her mother smiled, shading her eyes, calling softly, words that would never leave that beach. Beneath the surface, coral swayed as always, unaware that far below, the Earth's crust was tearing open, a wound stretching hundreds of miles, ancient pressure finally breaking free. In Thailand, a monk lit incense, the flame bending in a sudden draft that carried no wind. Dogs barked once, then stopped. Birds took flight without knowing why. For 10 long minutes, the ocean inhaled. The tide slid back, revealing rocks and sand untouched for centuries. Children ran forward, laughing, collecting shells that hadn't seen sunlight since before there were cities. And then, in one impossible moment, the sea exhaled. It began with silence. The kind that comes before the world remembers how fragile it is.
They smell wonderful this morning. We'll take 2 portions.
The morning light was soft, almost tender, as if the world had decided to start gently. Across the Indian Ocean, life moved in rhythm, fishermen pushing their boats into pale blue water, children chasing stray dogs along the sand, radios crackling old Hindi pop songs through morning static. The air smelled of salt, coffee, and routine. In Phuket, tourists lingered over breakfast, laughing about hangovers, the clatter of cutlery mixing with the slow hum of ceiling fans. A waiter poured orange juice, watching sunlight dance across the glasses, never guessing how short the day would be. In Sri Lanka, a boy hauled buckets of fish toward the market, their silver scales flashing like coins in the dawn. A teacher in Banda Aceh lifted her chalk, wrote December 26, 2004, and paused as a faint vibration rippled through the floor, just enough to break the chalk in her hand. On a balcony above the water, a newlywed couple filmed the horizon. Her voice rose with laughter, his camera lingered on the calm sea that mirrored the sky. "It's so still today," he said. That tape would later become history's first frame of catastrophe. Far below, the planet stirred. A fault line cracked open with the strength of 1,000 atomic bombs. The ocean shifted, invisible but immense. A satellite caught the first pulse, data on a screen, a whisper before the scream. In California, a seismologist's coffee rippled. In Alaska, a red light blinked. No alarms, no panic, just a quiet world, breathing in. The sea waited. The sky watched. Humanity, for a few more minutes, lived inside the illusion of peace, the kind that only exists right before it's taken away. The first sign wasn't sound. It was something deeper, older, a tremor that moved through the body before the mind could name it. In Banda Aceh, a fisherman stopped mid-knot, his fingers trembling though the morning was warm. He turned toward the horizon. The air had changed, heavy and metallic, the way it feels before lightning. Inside a small cafe nearby, a spoon rattled against a glass. The noise was soft, harmless, but enough to make everyone glance up. A woman laughed nervously. A man muttered, "Just a truck." Outside, dogs barked at nothing and ran inland, tails low, their instincts years ahead of human comprehension. Far below, the sea's floor was splitting open, rock grinding against rock, releasing centuries of pressure in one violent sigh. The earth groaned, a sound too low for ears, but not for bones. In Phuket, a woman filming her children frowned as the tide began to vanish. Her voice caught on tape that strange, the water's going away. Children followed the receding waves, collecting shells glittering on exposed sand. Unaware, they were walking across the breath the ocean had just drawn in. In Sri Lanka, fishermen shouted, pointing to the horizon. The line of the sea had changed, not receding now, but rising. A deep hum began to build, resonating in chests, in windows, in the silence between heartbeats. On satellite screens, scientists saw the impossible, a wave stretching for hundreds of miles, racing unseen beneath the surface. Warnings were drafted but too late, radio signals swallowed by interference. For one last heartbeat, the world stood still, windless, wordless, waiting. Then the silence broke, and the ocean began to run.
It's coming right at us.
It happened all at once, not with warning, not with reason, but with a single, terrible motion. The horizon didn't shimmer or swell. It rose as if the sea itself had decided to stand. The blue line that had always meant safety became a wall, higher than houses, faster than fear. For one impossible heartbeat, the world paused, cameras rolling, children laughing, waves retreating. Then the silence cracked and the earth began to roar. In Banda Aceh, the first wave struck with the force of a warhead. Streets dissolved into water. A bus floated sideways through an alley, windows bursting outward. Cars spun like toys, rooftops collided like bones. The mosque's dome vanished beneath a cloud of brown foam. Its loudspeaker fell silent mid-prayer. The sound wasn't water, it was glass, metal, and history breaking at once. In Phuket, the camera footage flashes white. The last frame shows two children running toward the ocean that had disappeared, then nothing but sky and a woman's voice screaming a name that would never be answered. Underwater, chairs, tables, and bodies turned slowly together, caught in a current that no longer knew up from down. A mother clung to her child against a concrete pillar. The water tore them apart like paper. A man scaled a palm tree, his hands raw, watching rooftops crash into one another like ships at war. In Sri Lanka, a passenger train to 2,000 souls lifted from its tracks and sailed inland, swallowed whole. In India, fishermen ran toward the hills as their boats ripped free and shattered against the shore. Helicopters circled above, voices shouting coordinates into radios that no longer worked. From space, the wave looked like a living shadow, one black vein racing across the Indian Ocean, stretching from Sumatra to Somalia. From the ground, it was the end of everything. In Thailand, a tourist reached through a hotel window to save a stranger. Both vanished beneath the next surge. Electricity sparked underwater, blue fire crackling through blackness, alive and dying in the same breath. Fishermen's boats smashed through walls of homes, through memories. A hotel bell rang once, bright and perfect, before disappearing into the flood. A woman surfaced, face caked in mud, gasping her son's name into the wind. A child's pink flip-flop floated past, gentle, quiet, the only still thing left in a moving world. Then, as quickly as it began, the sound began to fade. The water stilled. The air hung heavy with salt and smoke. The noise that had devoured everything was gone. And what remained was older than language, the sound of the earth breathing through water, and a silence too deep to ever forget. When the water finally stopped, the world forgot how to speak. Streets had no names anymore, only lines of wreckage carved into the earth. A fishing boat sat on top of a hospital roof. A car dangled from a power line, spinning gently in the wind, like a toy left behind by a careless child. In Banda Aceh, a man walked barefoot through what used to be his neighborhood, clutching a soaked photograph to his chest. His eyes didn't search. He didn't cry. He just kept walking, one foot after another, through puddles that reflected nothing.
Michael.
Somewhere nearby, a baby cried thin, raw, defiant, the only sound that proved life still existed. The air reeked of salt, diesel, and something older, silence. In Thailand, a woman knelt in the sand, sifting through debris with trembling hands, whispering a name over and over. Rescue teams waded through the mud, calling out, their voices swallowed by distance. Anyone alive, silence answered. Off the coast, a U.S. Navy ship appeared, gray against the pale horizon, the first sign that the world had begun to stir from its shock. Volunteers from Japan, Australia, America stepped into the ruin, faces pale beneath masks, voices breaking as they whispered, "You're safe now," though none of them believed it. When night came, candles flickered across the ruins, thousands of trembling lights marking where homes had been. A reporter's voice cracked on live broadcast, "There are no words for this." The camera turned toward the horizon, the ocean, flat and silver under the moon, as if nothing had happened. The same sea that had taken everything now looked gentle again, quiet, almost holy. And the world, exhausted and small, stood there watching, afraid to breathe too loud.
Keep them moving. The next plane lands in 10.
Load the water purification units next.
Weeks later, the world began to move again, hesitantly, as if afraid the ocean might still be listening. Planes landed on makeshift runways. Cargo ships appeared at dawn, their hulls heavy with boxes marked USAID, UNICEF, Red Cross, stacked higher than the wreckage they came to heal. Soldiers, nurses, and volunteers stepped onto broken shores, faces pale, eyes wide. A woman from Oregon knelt in the mud, bandaging a survivor's blistered hands, whispering, "You're not alone." The words crossed no language, only humanity. Across Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India, Thailand, strangers helped bury strangers. No one spoke the same tongue, but grief made its own translation. Prayers rose from mosques, temples, and churches alike, all sounding the same when spoken through tears. In laboratories, scientists replayed the seismic recordings again and again until they realized the impossible: the Earth had shifted on its axis. The planet itself had tilted, a reminder that even the world can lose its balance. In Sri Lanka, a teacher returned to her classroom. The board still read December 26, 2004. She didn't erase it. Instead, she wrote beneath, "We survived." Children colored waves in blue again, not black, not gray blue, as if hope had tides too. In Los Angeles, candles lined the pier. Their flames trembled in the wind, reflections shaking on the same ocean that had carried so much loss. Off Thailand, a diver surfaced holding a necklace tangled in coral. He placed it gently on the shore and whispered, "Welcome home." Reporters stopped asking how many died and started asking, how do we live after this? Because the true story wasn't the wave. It was the hands that reached through ruin, the people who stayed, rebuilt, remembered. 20 years later, the sea looks the same. But humanity doesn't. We build farther from the shore now. We listen closer when the ground begins to murmur. And when the tide goes still, locals say they can still hear it, a low hum beneath the waves, like the earth breathing through memory. Maybe it wasn't the sea that took them. Maybe it was silence, the kind that follows every lesson we never learn.